Welcome to the Grow Podcast. I'm Pastor Mike with New Hope Network. We're here to help you take your next step in your relationship with Jesus. I'm so glad you're with us today.
What's up, New Hope family? Welcome to episode 48 of the Grow Podcast. We're inching ever closer to episode 50. Very excited.
You know, I've got thinking,
My name's David, that's Pastor Mike. Please continue.
Yeah, you've got that. So, we're making a big deal of episode 50. We probably should have said 52 so that it's a full year.
No, we live in a 10-based society where we're obsessed with any number that ends in a zero. We get real excited about it.
Really? So we fully adopted the metrics. All right, never mind. All right, let's...
Oh, my word. All right, well, thanks for joining us on the Grow Podcast.
I just totally messed up the top of this.
Yeah, you did. You interrupted my intro, which is very upsetting.
Do we need to restart now?
I think everybody tuned out as soon as they didn't get to hear me say, my name's David, and as always, I'm joined by Pastor Mike. I think they're all gone now. So now we're just talking to an empty void.
Which is normally
that's what we do on a normal daily basis.
Which is normal nonsense. But
for episode 50,
yes,
we're doing a question and answer segment where you can throw your toughest theological questions, or you're just, I'm curious about this thing in the Bible, or I'm curious about this thing that you said in a sermon, or I'm curious why you're so obsessed with Jelly Bellies. I'm curious why you wear such colorful shirts. Any question you would like to throw at Pastor Mike, send an email to david@newhopewilliston.com. David is spelled D-A-V-E-D. So don't send it to david@newhopewilliston.com because that email does not exist.
Dav-Ed.
Or just David.
Yeah.
Or just David, but an E instead of an I. But send those questions in. We've been getting a bunch of questions, which we really appreciate. This is going to be the last week I ask for them because next week for episode 49, my goal is to kind of have everything planned and prepared out by the time that one airs.
So get those in.
So get your questions in now so that I can hurl them at Pastor Mike and we can see his reaction together. I'm very excited for a few of these questions. And for different reasons.
I was kind of excited for this, and now as I watch your excitement building, and kind of the sarcastic, not vengeful. That's not the word I'm looking for, but it's like almost inflictatory. Is that a word?
I'm excited for multiple reasons. Some of them they entertain me, and I'm excited to ask them. And then some of them are like genuinely really thoughtful and I think important questions that some people have asked. And so I'm excited for those as well. So it's a twofold excitement.
Be prepared for I don't know, but we'll find out on a future podcast episode.
Your question might dictate the future of the Grow Podcast.
That's a future episode. We'll talk about that.
We celebrated episode 50 of The Lobby, our goofy little hangout show before our online services. And then we just got to the 2-year anniversary. And we love The Lobby, and those of us who join us at New Hope here, The Lobby's a really, really enjoyable time we have to just kind of hang out together before the service. But I have not paid enough attention to it, so we completely missed episode 100. So we did what you said, and we celebrated episode 104 as our 2-year anniversary. And by celebrated, I mean we referenced it. That was about all we did.
That could be celebration. Speaking of celebration.
Oh, boy.
This, if you're listening to this on the week that this is done, this is Memorial Day week, which is
less of a celebration. People are celebrating. I guess you sort of celebrate, but
okay, you're a history buff. What's the history of Memorial Day?
Memorial Day and Veterans Day are often confused for one another by people, and most veterans, if you would go to a veteran on Memorial Day, and I think a veteran would always be happy to hear someone thank them for their service or whatever, but they will remind you that Memorial Day is not about remembering those who have served. It's about remembering those who lost their lives in service, and there's a reason we have both of those. They're both equally important. So Memorial Day goes back to Civil War.
It was kind of started,
but it wasn't called Memorial Day.
Do you remember what it was originally called?
Oh man, no.
Decoration
Day.
Because they would go to the cemeteries and decorate the cemeteries. It wasn't until 1971 that it became Memorial Day.
Yeah.
I had to Google that so that I sound that smart. But
I definitely, I should have remembered Decoration Day.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it used to be May 30th before that, I believe. But until 1971, it was always May 30th. So yeah,
it's
Memorial Day.
So, and the reason I asked that is because it ties in with what we're talking about today. So that you know.
Ooh.
Knowing the purpose of something can change how you understand it. And last week we began to talk about knowing your purpose. So I thought,
and we all solved it. Every one of us knows exactly our purpose now.
And that's the number one question. So I thought we would begin to kind of take a little bit different twist on it this week, is how to know if you're not living on purpose. How to know if you're not living on purpose. Psalm 57 says, the psalmist said, I cry out to God Most High, to God who fulfills his purpose for me. And I think it's key for us to understand God's purpose for your life, that God has a purpose for you. So we're going to kind of do part 2, because it's graduation season, right? And Williston Memorial Day weekend is graduation at our schools here in our area and the surrounding area. You know, it's the weekends around that. Colleges,
they're usually done by now.
Usually done.
Yeah.
Done by now. But yeah. What I want to walk us through,
maybe almost as importantly, it's grad party season.
Graduate party season.
It's time to go get some food.
I go to, and I love going to it. Graduation parties for seniors when they,
Oh yeah, like as a coaching high school basketball now. If any of my players invite me, I do everything I can to get to their grad parties.
Have you ever tracked what's your record on one day? How many you've had to go to?
Oh, no, I remember I led a small group of kids in our youth group for years, and they had been friends like their whole lives, and so I kind of had them for a few years through high school. And I went to a lot that year because there were other kids in the church, and then so I went to that. Probably, I don't remember how many it was, but that year was probably my highest year.
Kylie and I track. I don't know why. It's just one of those weird things we do.
I wonder, my dad being a pastor,
7.
I wonder if that's the most you've ever had?
We've done 7 in one day.
Oh, in one day?
In one day.
I thought you said in a year. I was like, 7?
No, in one day.
That is
maybe I did say
too many grad parties in a day.
Yeah, and you just can't visit with people. So that was the year after that we kind of made the rule, and because the size of the scope of our church is, we'll go if you invite us and we're available, we'll go.
Yeah,
and we'll be there. But we only go to those that we receive. Some invitations
that's
for.
Kind of
because some of what we ran into and we've faced before is like, there was this expectation. Well, the pastor just will come. Well, we didn't always know, and weren't connected. So we'll go to those. And it was a little bit different when our kids were graduating because, we didn't know all their friends. We're like, you go to your friend's graduation party. I'm not going to that.
Yeah, that's kind of my mentality too. I just I don't need a paper invitation. If a kid sends texts me and he's, hey, my grad party's on Saturday at this time. I'll do everything I can to get there.
I will do everything. And this year we had to travel some, the week before, so we didn't get to make it to some of them. But
how much of an influence is the food on if you go or not? Be honest, Pastor.
It's on whether we eat or not. We'll hit every party, but there are some parties
you'll linger at.
I think, the lingering.
What if they have a Jelly Belly buffet? You're going to hang out at that one a little bit
ask
longer?
The question, how much is food an influence as to how long you stay at the party?
I think that's fair. Yeah.
There's two things that, this is horrible for us to talk about this. But, just purely from self reasons, food and friendship, will cause us to we just want to sit and visit with people. Not that we aren't friends with everybody, but there's just some where it's like, okay. And then, there was one a few years ago. they had it fully catered by this whole thing, and we didn't care who we knew. We were staying there for a while.
A friend.
These are pastor confessions. We shouldn't be doing this.
A friend and I crashed a grad party once, which was one of my favorite activities. My friend
This
Dan,
is the Confessions podcast.
My friend Dan and I just went to a grad party. We didn't know who it was, and we just walked in and said congratulations and went and got some food and then left.
I feel like that's going to be a new movie. Instead of Wedding Crashers, it's going to be like
Grad Party Crashers.
Grad Party Crashers.
It's just, we wanted little sandwiches and some bars. Classic Minnesota grad party food.
Scotcheroos.
We call them Special K bars in Minnesota,
Special K bars?
even if they're not made with Special K.
Okay. Not Rice Krispie bars.
Well, those are a different thing altogether. Rice Krispie bars are just Rice Krispies with marshmallow.
Yeah, but then you cover them with chocolate and they become
and like peanut
Scotcheroos,
butter or
right?
whatever.
Yeah.
But they're just Special K bars. North Dakotans and your weird words.
The last couple episodes have been longer, and I've noticed it's because there's more nonsense at the beginning.
Well,
so
when I move somewhere,
I hope you enjoy that. But
and they call Sloppy Joe's slush burgers.
Yes.
I immediately.
That is a North Dakota thing. I've heard that nowhere else.
Correct. I immediately learned nothing said here is an acceptable word. Any weird words I hear here, I'm not going to be like, oh, I should learn that. I'll be like, nope. I'm not
the other
doing
thing,
that,
and this really bothers my
slush burger is
friends from
gross.
the South and from Texas, is, you'll invite people over for a backyard barbecue here. And they're going, oh, we're barbecuing.
Mm.
We're throwing burgers on the grill.
Yeah,
That's
hot
not a
dog,
barbecue.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, I think that's a little bit of the North.
Yeah,
North
I think you
Midwest
might hear
thing,
that in Minnesota a little bit too. But
yeah.
Michael, our producer, what's that word that you always use?
Coolie.
A coulee.
Yeah.
What is that?
That's
it's just like a valley between a hill and another hill.
My wife would say that in Nebraska. That
was a word I had never heard. Yeah. Michael and I were driving one day, and he referenced it like I would know what he was talking about.
I've heard that like in the Appalachian area.
Have you?
Yeah. So
I don't like it.
Yeah.
Again, they lost me at slush burger, which is
Should
awful.
we get to our topic eventually?
My purpose today is to get people to start calling slush burgers Sloppy Joes.
Well, part of this, it's Memorial Day weekend, so let's just if you're listening live,
true.
it's a little bit of fun. So, and I'm the actual what I want to walk through is not all that long, but I just want to do an addendum to what we talked about last week, living on purpose, and I want to give us a quick list right off the top. Not original with me; it's actually from Cornerstone University. 6 ways to know if you're not living God's purpose out for you. And I think this is just really, really good. I ran across these. I wrote them down and said, these have got to be on a podcast when we talk about purpose. So I'm just going to list these real quick. Here's the first one to know you're not living God's purpose. I'm not living in obedience to Scripture.
Sure.
If I'm not living in obedience to Scripture, I'm not living God's purpose.
Yeah.
Okay. Second one, you lack joy and excitement when you think about your life. Now, this is different than we talked about a couple weeks ago, the whole happiness thing. But if your life is going, oh, I hate my life. I hate everything about my life. You may not be you may be headed towards living more on purpose, but you may not be in the center of that right now. Galatians 5 talks about that one of the fruits of the Spirit is joy. And joy, we've talked about it here, is something even deeper than happiness. It doesn't mean that it's not difficult or draining or discouraging.
Sure.
Okay.
Some of us are Minnesota sports fans. We will experience a lot of difficulty and discouragement.
And the next one goes with this. If you're lacking a sense of fulfillment, and part of this is we look to all kinds of things, wrong things for fulfillment. So if you're lacking a sense of fulfillment, it's probably because you're pursuing something you were never meant to pursue. And that would be outside of God's purpose. Fourth thing is your whole purpose of working is so you don't have to work. And here's what it is. So many of us are just working for the weekends or working for retirement.
Are you going to sing the song now?
No.
But everybody's working for the weekend, I've heard.
Yeah, everybody's, yeah. Ecclesiastes talks about, how so many of us just get caught in this. Man is nothing better under the sun but to eat and drink and to be joyful, for this will go with him in his toil through the days of his life. And you walk through this whole thing, and he said you can get caught in this thing of just pursuing happiness. That's the one extreme, right? Or just I'm gonna work so that I can pursue happiness. And if all you're doing is just living for the next experience, you're missing out on living life to the full.
Does that mean if I don't like my job,
Not
then like
necessarily.
I should just quit and
No.
because I'm not supposed to work that
No.
job?
Part of it is you might need that job right now. No. If the job isn't fulfilling, I think it's okay to ask that question, but don't just walk away from it, without a God direction.
Yeah.
5 and 6, I'm going to go through pretty quickly. You feel stuck in your life. If you feel stuck in your life, it may be because you aren't in a place where you're experiencing the fullness of your purpose. Doesn't mean you're in a bad place. Just may mean you aren't there. Or number 6 is you have no direction. You're just wondering what the point of life is. You're not making forward progress.
That one of my favorite things that you said last week, if I can remember how to say it properly, you said purpose is a path, not a target.
Yeah.
I think a lot of those are good reminders of that. Like our purpose is.
It's not the destination.
Yeah.
At least, and the way I understand it from Scripture is, I don't think it will even be when sin's out of the picture after the restoration in eternity. I think our purpose will just describe, who we get to lean more and more and more into for the thousands of years. Life will just get more exciting. So, as we move into it, we started last week by we ended last week by how to begin to discover God's purpose for your life. And I gave us kind of 3 things right off the top. And I want to get a little bit more specific, but again, not spend a ton of time on this. So if you've got something to write things down on or something, write these down. If you want to begin to, now I want to encourage you, if you haven't listened last week, go back and listen last week. Because those 3 things we talked about are the baseline. Okay. Then these next 4 things are kind of the next level. So it's kind of like we're building a level of stone in a wall. So start on the bottom level. This is the next level.
We'll put them in the podcast notes or the summary or whatever, so people can find them.
First thing is ask God. If you're wanting to find out your purpose, just ask him. James 1:5 says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously. And just make it a daily prayer. Plan some times of solitude and listening. One of the things I've realized about myself right now is I've allowed some noise to creep into my listening times. And so I'm having to eliminate and make sure I'm giving myself some extended times of listening, because I just fill my life up with noise. And
if it's not too personal, what kind of noise? I think it might help people.
I think distraction.
An Apple Watch.
Yeah, yeah. Technology can sometimes be a distraction.
That's a big one for me.
I love reading the Bible on my phone, but it can sometimes be a distraction because all the notifications pop up. So one of the things I've done is I've actually turned off virtually all notifications on my phone. I will check it for notifications at certain times of the day. So it's not like I'm ignoring those, but I'm checking at certain times of the day. Yeah. Now, there's a handful of people in my immediate family, they can break through at any time and it'll notify me. But that's one of those things. I've become more careful about, when I'm tired, where do I go when I'm tired? Do I just click on the TV and just let something do that? Yeah. Or do I go, okay, if I'm tired, let's just spend some time listening to the one who restores my soul. And sometimes when I get stressed, I go to things like TV, food, all those things.
For sure.
And those things create noise. So sometimes just turning the radio off in the car and just talking. And sometimes in prayer, just stop talking and just listen. You know? But do that. Second thing is then do a Bible study for yourself, or maybe even better, we talk a lot about groups. Invite some other people. Do a study on God's purpose. Read the biographies of those who discovered purpose. It's a great book by a friend who I've referred to here before. His name is Tony Stoltzfus, and don't ask me how to pronounce his name, or I pronounce it how to spell his name. But he wrote a phenomenal book called The Calling Journey. That it just walks you through that. The Bible says in Psalm 119, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Just do a Bible study on that. How David discovered his purpose. Number 3 is begin to make lists. And we talked about this last week, paying attention to who you are. But make lists of who you are. What are your strengths? Because God gave you things that you're good at. What are your weaknesses? What are some of your experiences? even the experience, God never wastes an experience. So even like with Joseph, even his experience in prison, being accused of, trying to seduce Potiphar's wife and all those things, not that God caused those, but God didn't waste those. And he ultimately used those moments to prepare Joseph. So what are some of those things? And we talked last week about passions as well.
Did God give me my weaknesses? You said God gives me my strengths. Did he give me my weaknesses as well?
I think it depends on what we're talking about as weaknesses. Weaknesses like weaknesses to give in to that are, like for me, jelly bellies. He didn't make me, weak towards jelly bellies.
What about making me prone to procrastination? Did he make me that way? I mean,
I think to some extent, yes.
Sure.
I mean, some of that's your personality,
yeah,
and who you are, and there's strengths and weaknesses to your personality,
yeah,
and we need to work on some things,
right.
obviously. But we've joked before, and we have a whole video somewhere about you trying to teach me how to play basketball.
It was a dark day for all of us.
I'm not coordinated in the least.
You did
no
catch
matter
that
how
water
hard,
bottle when Michael threw it to you.
Yeah.
That was a big deal.
No matter how hard I try. That's just not who I was created to be. So you could say it that way. Yeah, he gave me that weakness, but not a character weakness.
Sure.
In any way,
that
shape,
comes
or
from
form.
the fall.
Yeah, that comes from the fall.
Okay.
The last thing is here: invite others who follow Jesus to help you discover your purpose. Small groups matter.
Yeah, big time.
Following Jesus is a team sport. I sometimes think I'm really, really good at something, and we've all known that person who thinks they're really, really good at something, and everybody else around is going, no. That person who thinks, man, I can sing, and everybody's going, I've got an idea for you. Let's have you monitor the pilot light on the furnace.
So all those people in like the first week of American Idol back in the day, they did not have a small group, is what you're saying?
Yeah, we just need those things, but also to affirm in us, what are you good at?
Yeah,
what are you good at? Because sometimes, especially in our insecurities, we aren't sure.
Yeah.
What are your experiences? And in the end, as what we talked about last week, everyone can know their general purpose. But, and this is the hard reality, not all of us always discover with clarity our specific purpose. But it goes back to, I think our purpose is more about the path than the destination.
Yeah.
So personality, maturity, the season of life, growth, the process, I think, is the power that comes into your life. The process, the path is the power of growing you. And here's the bottom line, in these 2 weeks, if I can just bring it all in for kind of a landing. Trust that God will show you what you need to know about your purpose when you need to know it.
Yeah, that's hard though.
Yeah, it is.
Especially, if you're around other people who, and we talk about comparison. Comparison is the thief of joy. But you have a small group and you're like, well, that person and that person, this friend, they all seem to have their purpose figured out. And I don't have, I don't know that target, right?
Yeah.
You're saying that target isn't our purpose, it's the path. But that makes it so difficult to be like, why can't I know? When you have, just even being around you, sometimes I find myself catching that way. I'm like, well, Pastor Mike's been a pastor for 30 years now.
Over 30 years.
I didn't want to go. I wanted to go under, not over.
Yeah.
30 plus years.
Yeah.
You've known what you're called to do that whole time, and you've been doing that without break that whole time.
And I'll, yes, pastor. I never thought that being a senior pastor, lead pastor, was on the picture for me. And a lot of days I still wonder.
Like when we record the Grow podcast, those days.
It's like we just talked about nonsense for the last 25 minutes, But that was a major kind of moment for me.
Yeah.
I think the next step in my season and process is for me to step into this role.
But I don't see that, right? I don't see that in your life. I see the, we talk about like social. I see the Instagram version of your purpose, right? I see he's been a pastor for 30 plus years and God has blessed his ministry and he's clearly doing. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know, like I've done a bunch of different things in the last 12 years. Why can't I just know this is what I'm going to do and I can just do it?
And I think, again, what you talked about last week, we confuse our role with our purpose. Our role can be certainly, and should be, I think at times, a reflection of our purpose. But ultimately, my purpose, how I acted out has changed over the years. But ultimately, my purpose is about developing mature followers of Jesus. And I can do that, working at McDonald's if that's where the Lord wants me.
Yeah. What's our homework this week, Pastor Mike?
I think the homework is just to ask yourself the question of how aware are you of your purpose? How aware are you of your purpose? And walk back through these last 2 weeks and just increase your awareness of your purpose, taking one of the steps that we talked about.
And avoiding the mentality of that target is my purpose too. Because, man, that just leads to discouragement for so many of us when we think, especially as you get older. I remember being in college, I talked about it where, I changed my major a million times and I just didn't, what am I going to do? And, but I was 19, I was 21. I was like, well, whatever. But now I'm 34 and I know I'm not like super old, but I'm 34 and it could be so much more discouraging now to not know what that target is if my focus is still on that target. Cause you're like, well, now I'm 34. I'm approaching middle age and I still don't know exactly what that target is. So keeping our mindset on that path, like what part of that path is my purpose? What's my next step? As we often
and
say
we always have a next step. I think there's mistakes we make both on give me a clear picture of my purpose so I can aim at it. Or there's a mistake on the other end of our age, chronological age of I've accomplished my purpose. Now I'll just sit back. And no, as long as, even beyond alive and breathing, once you're in eternity, you have a purpose. And your purpose is not just to sit back and watch TV and wait for eternity to come. It's to be part of the kingdom.
Will we have TV in heaven? We'll save that for episode 50.
Please, nobody ask that question.
We'll save that for episode 50. Well, thank you, Pastor Mike. Thank all of you for joining us. Again, this is going to be your last week to get questions in for episode 50. So for episode 50, we're going to do a fun time and also meaningful time so far based on the questions I've got. Question and answer with Pastor Mike. So email me your questions, David, Daved, @newhopewilson.com, because I would love to get your questions to give to Pastor Mike. And again, it's kind of our tagline. We have a tagline, Pastor Mike.
We do.
At our podcast. And it's growth always starts with a next step. And so that's why you hear us so often on this podcast, really on anything we do in the New Hope Network. You hear us talking about next steps because we all have a next step. And so let's make sure we don't just sit and listen to the podcast, but we, actually implement the things we're learning and try to, go through that list. Again, those will be in the podcast notes too. I want to remind you, you can find those 4 things that Pastor Mike went through to rediscover your purpose in the podcast notes. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done that yet on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the video podcast you can find on YouTube. We just thank you so much for being a part of the Grow podcast. Thank all of you as well. I've been getting more thank yous and encouragement for the podcast lately, and I try to always let you know about those because there's so many people talk about how it's just a really meaningful way for them to start their week and take that little next step, to focus their week on growing their relationship with God. So thank all of you for those words of encouragement. We really appreciate that. And we will see you next week.